what a reasonable, attentive interpreter who's competent with the language, blah, 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 has to be filled out, would take the speaker we're referring to. Now this is definitely a different concept, right? Definitely a different concept from what the other two were. One prime and two prime. One prime and two prime. Then what the speaker referred to and what the AOC took or thought the speaker was referring to. And now there's this other thing which doesn't involve the speaker or the hearer really. It's what a reasonable, attentive, linguistically competent, with good eyesight, blah blah blah, interpreter would take the speaker to mean. And that could be different. So you might have, well, what the speaker actually was referring to, what we, the audience, thought the speaker was referring to, and then, we could be convinced by talking to people that, look, what a reasonable, you people are unreasonable, that's what you got, that's what the speaker meant. Neither of you are being very reasonable here. What a reasonable interpreter would take the speaker to be referring to would be this person, not that. So, you speak to me, you say, I just read John's book last night, because you read Speech Acts, and you're talking about John Searle. I am a bit confused about things. I seem to think there's this philosopher, John Wayne, who wrote about something, in cowboys. So I think you're referring to him, and that's what I think. But in fact, we're both being a bit unreasonable in certain terms. Let's say somebody else thinks we're referring to John Perry, and most reasonable people in the world. So we're back to the situation where you're referring to Searle, I think you're referring to John Wayne, and 6 billion other people who sort of average out as reasonable, attentive, blah, 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 or get something else completely different. That's certainly a possibility. And what's interesting about this 3' type of case, and 3 here, is even though they're not what's actually interested, nobody in the speech situation is actually interested in this. Right? When somebody actually, when two people are talking, there's what the speaker intended to get across and what the hearer thought the speaker intended to get across. And that's the only thing that's interesting. This is something that's sort of imposed from above by God or theorists or something. Well, look, but what would a reasonable person, and which the speaker and the hearer should just go, we don't care. This is what I got. This is what the hearer got, and we're in the middle of a conversation. Please don't interrupt. What would a reasonable person get? This is what actually happened in the speech situation. This is imposed upon it in some way. Is it a useful imposition? Well, a theorist might say that's the notion that's really at the heart of a theory of meaning, a theory of reference. This is the one we should focus on. Okay, there is this thing that what the speaker was talking about, what the hearer thought the speaker was talking about, but those aren't the relevant to semantics. You might have this view. Okay? This is what it should be aimed at. And of course, there is a tradition, Davidson, as this sort of like, of talking about this sort of almost perfect interpreter, this rational, reasonable interpreter, what they would get from the situation.
Well, so now musical based, and you refer also to the charity principle or something like that, the principle of rationality.
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Yeah. But see, what you, I think this is built in, the way I approach it, I think this is built in because the speaker assumes that the hearer is a reasonable, attentive, linguistically competent person. And so this also ends up being the same thing. I mean, it won't always, but by and large it will, because the speaker thinks, okay, this is a reasonable person, they're attentive, they understand English, this should work. This is what I'm referring to, and the hearer gets it. And the hearer thinks, okay, the speaker's sort of reasonable, knows what they're saying. He thinks I'm reasonable and attentive, linguistically competent. So it's sort of built into the very idea of the intentional theory of meaning, because you can't intend what you think is completely unreasonable, or that you don't think a hearer's got a chance of getting. So it's going to, by and large, coincide with this. There can be offbeat cases, but they are offbeat. So even if this is an important notion, my claim is the intentionalist. This has already been smuggled in because the concept of intention is a very rich one that involves the speaker's expectations about, and rationality assumptions about the person that they're engaging with in the conversation, and similarly on the hearer's point of view. So something like that is worked in. Though it could well be the case that these three things actually, all three diverge. Absolutely perfectly possible, and it would be weird if that weren't a possibility. We want to allow for errors, and we want to allow for this thing, for both people having in mind something which diverges from this. It would be a bit weird if that never happened. so far from seeing these as problems, I see these as this possibility of diversity as being a desiderata. We should allow possibilities like because they actually exist in real life. But they're not a threat to the semantic theory or the pragmatic theory. They're just part of the data that needs to be explained. Right. Now, I won't bother with this, but see, there is this literature which says that referring is like hitting a target. And you can aim, you can miss, and there's all this sort of stuff going on. I don't think this is a very good analogy at all. I mean, suppose we're throwing custard pies around, okay, like in some old Marx Brothers movie or something like that, right? And I decide I'm going to aim to hit Carlo with this custard pie. And I aim at Carlo, so he's my target. And it's perfectly aimed, okay, but then he ducks, okay, and then Alberto walks in. Custard pie in the face, okay. Now, looks like I was aiming, I intended to hit Carlo with the custard pie, but I actually hit Alberto. And it seems the reference is not really like this. You can't, there isn't this, you can't dodge away from startup from being referred to. You know, it's him. It doesn't matter where the actual pointing is going. It's the content of the intention that makes it. Now, there are errors of a sort, but they're more sophisticated type that involve conflicting propositional attitudes, I think. And I think the Kripke case involving Smith and Jones, two proper names, the Reagan Leaves case, is that type of case. So I don't want to talk too much about this type of case with the custard pie, because I don't think we can get much out of it in the end, or an arrow, whatever it is. So let's. Well, here we go. So here's the paragraph so we can say what I've been alluding to all along. Given all these considerations, it's hard to get excited about the literature, about all the thousand papers that graduate students and professors have written over the last 30 years. Hard to get excited about some of the cases philosophers have contrived to differentiate the predictions made by specific theories about what the speaker really refers to, or about what was really referred to, or about what the word relative to the context, or the word relative to the utterance really referred to, and so on. So here's Kaplan's example, the demonstrative. Kaplan, behind him usually hangs this picture of Rudolf Carnap. Somebody's replaced it by this picture of this sort of second-rate politician, Spiro Agnew. And what does Kaplan, here's a question, what does Kaplan refer to when he points, without looking, to the area of the wall where the picture of Agnew hangs, and he says, that is a picture of one of the greatest philosophers of the 20th century. Okay, let's just call the picture of Carnap O. So, people have said, look, he's referring to the picture of Agnew, or he's referring to the picture of Carnap. Some people have actually said, well, if you rephrase the question, he's referring to Carnap, or he's referring to Agnew. Okay, let's just talk about the way Kaplan actually thinks. Which pictures are you referring to? Well, here's I think, and people got into, people said, well, the intentionists think it must be, it must be the picture of Kaplan. The sort of more extensionist sort of people think, well, it's got to be the picture of Agnew, because that's the one that's actually there right now that he's pointing to, and we'd like the pointing rather than the directing intention to fix the reference, and then as people start arguing about which way should Kaplan go on this, and which way should we go. I can't get excited about this sort of case, really. I think that, first of all, you can re-describe the case. It's so undescribed, for one thing. What are Kaplan's views about the audience? What has the audience seen the picture before? What does Kaplan think about the audience having seen the picture before? Is it obscure to some people? Are there mirrors? All sorts of ways you can spill out a scenario which manipulate your intuitions. But here is the sort of basic fact. Kaplan, this was what makes the story fly at all. Kaplan's seen the picture of Carnap before in his life, because it used to be there, and he thinks it's there right now. Right? He doesn't think that that picture's there, even though you might want to say, well, of course he thinks that picture's there, right? That seems to play into the hands of the intentionist. He thinks that the picture of Carnap is there. He doesn't think that picture's there. Right? Which one? That one, the one he's pointing to. He doesn't think the picture he's pointing to is there on the wall. Of course he thinks the picture he's pointing to is the picture he's pointing to, the picture on the wall. Okay, so you can see there's a lot of slippage between referential and attributed uses of the descriptive material, and the whole thing gets murky very quickly. So let's just give it this, we're just going to dub it O. He's seen O. O used to be on the wall behind him. He's seen it there many times. And he's got lots of singular beliefs about O. And one of the singular beliefs he's got right now is that it's on the wall behind him. That's a belief about that picture. And that picture isn't on the wall behind him. So what, he believes that the picture is not on the wall behind him, not the wall behind him? Isn't that contradictory? No, we've got out of that way of talking by introducing this term O. O is simply a name of the picture of Kaplan. And he thinks that that picture is hanging on the wall behind him right now. However you want to describe it, he thinks that that picture is on the wall behind him.
Well, you may think that, however, I do see where the differences from the case of the time. I mean, there is a question of time. There were a picture of Kaplan, now there is a picture of Neale.
Yeah.
There were somebody in front of you,
Yeah.
you throw the pie,
Yeah.
somebody else comes,
Yeah.
and you hit the other one.
Yeah.
So you wanted to hit the first, but by mistake you
Right.
settled because some time passed, some
Yeah.
event happened.
Yeah.
So I don't see the difference.
Okay. So the difference is supposed to be this. In the throwing the custard pie, I'm having a visual experience of you, and I'm looking at you, and I see that you are the target. It's not just that Carlo echoes the target, Carlo Echo is the target, but that guy there, the one I'm actually looking at right now, and I'm having a singular thought about you, and I'm throwing the custard pie at you, but you have to duck, and Alberto gets the pie. And so what, it's nothing to do with anything. I mean, could I have made better? Should I have taken into account you were going to duck a bit? But the point is, I'm actually having a singular thought about you, and I'm watching the pie travel towards you and actually miss you and get somebody else.
Well, think of that. Kaplan is looking at the picture of Carmen there, and he's going to say, this is the best philosopher. While he's very slowly he's pointing to the picture of Carmen, somebody changes it. Okay. Something like that.
Yeah.
So it's something similar. Only the same time passed.
No, because I think it's. I want to talk about what the speaker referred to. Right now, what I'm claiming is that the hitting and the referring are not similar in the following sense. They're both intentional notions. I mean, well, hitting itself is not an intentional notion because you intend to hit. But I want to say intending to refer and refer, they're just the same thing. I'm denying the distinction between intending to refer to O and actually referring to O in answering something. So that is not, I can have an intention right now, I'm going to refer to O later. That's not the same as referring to O. But the type of intention that we're talking about here, the communicative intention, singular meaning intention, is the type of intention that, as I said, comes actually into being at the moment of the production of the utterance. Okay? Now I want to say that that's the same thing as referring. When I do that, I am referring. It doesn't really matter what happens now. So I use the word Carlo, or I say you. It doesn't matter if you move out of the way, and I'm pointing at Alberto. I still refer to you. So it doesn't actually matter what happens in the world now, in that case. Even I'm pointing at you, but I use the word Carlo or that man. And somehow I say it very slowly, and you move, and think, that's not going to affect anything with reference, right? Alberto just happens to walk in. Nothing actually changes from the point of view of the reference. That's not so with hitting, because the pie's in the air, something happens, and I have no control over the pie now. But with the intention to refer, I've got control the whole time over what I'm intending to refer to. But I don't have control over this pie flying through the air. That's supposed to be the idea. It's a purely intentional notion, whereas the trajectory of the pie isn't. The trajectory of my intention is. That's how I'm thinking of the difference. So I may not like it, but that's how I'm thinking of it.
The intention to refer by Kaplan is to Carmen. And the movement of the hand is like throwing the pie.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think you still referred.
He refers to Kaplan.
Kind of. Yeah.
But his hand refers to.
Oh, his hand doesn't refer, but the hand reference is not something I've been defined.
It's a conventional.
Oh, no, I don't think it is. I don't think it is. Okay. I think it's something that people often do as a way of trying to get the hero to focus on the object they're interested in. But it doesn't fix the reference. I think that Kaplan is right to think that Kaplan uses his wrong in thinking that the demonstration actually does determine the reference. And that was Kaplan's view in the 70s, absolutely. But I think he was right to change his mind and say it's the intention which actually determines the reference. The pointing is simply like the descriptive material in the description. It's part of it, get the person to go in the right direction, as it were. Right? I think that's right. I think that was a good move, I think.
A general question related to this point. Right now, you are just offering us a different way of looking at things, but we are not offering arguments for looking at things that way. The only argument that you gave us is that the theoretical frame that you are
right. So the argument, the justification for these uses of words of mean, say, refer, and implicate are derived from their roles in an overall theory which gives us the best answer to the master question, right? And I suspect you cannot give individual arguments about what's the best theory of proper names, what's the best theory of demonstratives, independently of how the words refer and name and so on are going to function in the context of the overall theory. And that's my big gripe about the literature. It's too piecemeal. People have tried to tackle these things individually as if there's some fact of the matter about reference and truth and meaning and implication within some sort of localized set of examples that they're interested in. And I'm claiming that's just a big mistake. You're never going to get it. These are useful diagnostics for getting going, but the truth of the matter has got to come in the context of this entire nexus of theoretical notions, how they hang together, and the extent to which the final story gives an answer to the master question. Yeah, that's exactly right. I don't believe in these individual arguments. And so that's what the individual counterexamples. I mean, one of the best remarks I ever heard by a linguist or philosopher was from Chomsky. And somebody presented what to be a counterexample to one of Chomsky's theses. He was laying out some theory. And the person said, well, this is the counterexample. And Chomsky said, yeah, what's a counterexample? It's just a counterexample. Not very interesting. And so he carried on with the theory, and people were looking around and I thought, that's wrong, that's my attitude. And then somebody pushed him afterwards. He said, well, we can't tell the basis of one or two characters. What does that show? Nothing, or maybe we haven't got the concept exactly the way we want it yet. Maybe the definition, maybe one of the. And it says, if you come up with a whole bunch of thousands of them, they all seem to yield some over to a theory. Okay, fine. But an isolated counterexample, we're going to pay attention to that. I think that's exactly the right way to think about it. It's just a counterexample. If philosophers say one counterexample, that's it. They start weeping and revising their definitions, and the whole world's gone to hell. And it's a bit silly, I think, because you can't tell until you've got all of these concepts together in the context of an entire theory about what predictions are really going to be made. And ideally, when you've got a bigger theory within which all these interlocking theories interact, you won't get counterexamples. I mean, one of the things that can happen, of course, is that in syntax, you've got these interlocking things. You've got binding, and in the old days, binding, and government, and projection principle, and all these things. So you find that you get a set of predictions here, and a set of predictions here, and when they actually come together, you get a set of quite different predictions because there are ways in which these principles interact, which you don't even see until you've got the rest of the machinery in place. I think semantics is exactly the same. There's no reason to think it isn't. There's also this thing in syntax, of course, about now, it's not so much getting, I mean, there was a period when you've got a set of strings of English, let's say, all possible strings, and then you want to sort of draw a line down the middle. These are the good ones, the sentences, and these ones. So this is the King of France would be a sentence, but this, the, of, the, and the, not a sentence, and everybody agrees. But of course what happens is the cases you get the sort of borderline cases where people can't quite decide. What's become very important in linguistic theory and syntax now is relative grammatical judgment. This one is more grammatical than that one, okay, and less grammatical than this other one. And that type of thing is taken very seriously as being sort of pointing in the right direction. I think we should adopt the same sort of methodology when it comes to semantics. This one P entails Q a lot more than P prime does.